And now, an interview that we were going to do on Monday, but we are now going to do tonight, which many of you were waiting keenly on, with Julian Assange, who's nearing, what is it, Julian, 500 days in house arrest?
Well, I've lost count, Norman, but I think it's 500 in 24 days.
Where are you? Where are you under house arrest?
Well, I'm outside the city of London, in the country. It's a bit isolating, but it's necessary for security reasons.
So it's not it's not a little shed. You're in a quite comfortable house.
It's a small country holiday house, but it's comfortable enough, and I have an unfortunate position to have some good friends in this country who care for me.
Right, we're getting a bit of noise there on your phone, Julian. Is there a bit of wind coming through or something like that?
There is. I just stepped outside, Norman, because it was breaking up a bit. Let me move into another room. Maybe the reception will be better.
Okay.
Go ahead, Norman.
Well, we're certainly getting an audio tour of your incarceration, Julian. So, what's the situation with you're waiting on the Supreme Court handing down the appeal on the extradition?
Yes, so we had a very big Supreme Court case here, which in itself is quite interesting. So the Supreme Court said that the matter was of great public importance. This concerns whether in the European Union one state can extradite a person from another state without any charges being laid, without any evidence being given, and when the person issuing the extradition request is not even a judge but is a policeman or a prosecutor. So that really goes to the fundamental notion of statehood, because really a key ingredient of statehood is that you have the monopoly on the deployment of coercive force. And so if mere policemen, say, in other countries in the EU, are able to take the reins of coercive force in England or in other EU countries, then how does that redefine the state in the EU? Really, it does, in fact, create an EU as a nation state, as opposed to an EU as a mechanism which permits states within the EU to cooperate. And that's been part of an ideological project in the EU from the moment of the Cold War to try and produce a United States of America. And that a particular aspect in relation to extraditions within the EU came in after 9/11, in response to 9/11, saying that this mechanism was necessary for terrorist extraditions from one state to another, to do things very quickly, without evidence, without even charge.
And if you win, putting aside the impact on you, if you win, then it creates a crisis in terms of internal extradition processes within the European Union.
But it's hard to say. I mean, ideally, that would be the case, and it would solidify more common law notions about this, which are, to be fair, which are included in the EU Constitution. That there should not be punishment before trial, that decisions that are made that affect someone's liberty must be reviewable by the courts. And so if I win, it could be within the context of simply that Swedish policemen are not able to do this, but it will set some kind of important precedent.
And is there a double jeopardy? Can they reissue the extradition order from a more appropriate source and get round the finding of the Supreme Court?
Yeah, so they can.
So it might not end with this.
The Swedes could reform their system to be compliant with the British law. The British law demands that a judicial authority issue an extradition warrant. So they could bring their system into compliance with that and reissue. But that's not really the big concern. What is likely, if I do win, then the United States will issue its request for extradition, and they can simply do that by telephone call, and then they have 40 days to put in the actual extradition papers themselves.
Why haven't they done that yet? I mean, what grounds would they have for doing that? Is that via the Bradley Manning case?
That's by this Bradley Manning case, there has been a grand jury meeting every month, several days a month in Washington, D.C. for the past 14 or so months, since September 2010. And that grand jury goes for a period of 18 months. Information has come out from several sources that this grand jury has a indictment against me already, but they're keeping it sealed until the appropriate moment comes to release it. And the UK ambassador, the US ambassador to the UK, Sussman, said early last year that they were waiting for the Swedish case before considering their moves. So that's also reports that we hear back from our people in Canberra, that everyone's sort of happy with the Swedish solution, and the UK as well. So it's to ship me off to Sweden, and then Sweden has to deal with the matter.
But in fact, in the United States, it's over the breach of security and WikiLeaks, rather than the case in Sweden, which is alleged sexual assault.
Well, the case in Sweden, there's no charges, so it's all very, very odd. There is no case to that degree. There is a demand by a Swedish prosecutor from Gothenburg that I be extradited to Sweden for questioning, and she has refused to use all the standard EU mechanisms such as the Mutual Assistance Treaty or Skype or a telephone call or anything else, even though that is normally done in Sweden, to question me. So we believe that this questioning is in fact not a legitimate activity. If it was legitimate...
So this is where your conspiracy theory, if you like, is that they're doing this so that America can extradite you directly from Sweden.
Well, like all rare circumstances, like a jumbo jet going down, it tends to be many unusual factors coming together. And in this particular case, there's a Swedish national election just 1 month after the arrest, and this guy Claes Borgström was running in the Swedish election, and the complainants all from the same party, the Social Democratic Party. So there's national factors, and there's also political factors.
Why do you
Sweden has grown very close over the past 10 years to the United States.
Let's talk about the United States for a moment. I mean, why are they going after you? I mean, WikiLeaks is an organization. It has many members. It has members who are public. You know, it's not a secret who's been involved in WikiLeaks at the top. Why do you think America would be focusing on you rather than a corporate group? You know, 5 or 6 people that could be easily identified as being involved with WikiLeaks.
It's the principle of general deterrent, Norman. So WikiLeaks has been going for over 5 years. We've done material from over 120 countries. But in our publications about the United States in 2010, we've reached a certain level of publicity which was of global prominence. And the United States and the Pentagon made a 40-minute press conference demanding of me personally, by name, and the White House as well, that we destroy all our previous publications that had come from the US government. We destroy all future publications that we had in our possession, that we would publish, and that we cease dealing with US military employees, full stop. And of course, we said that those demands were unacceptable and we would not be following them. We did not. In fact, we published everything that we said we were going to publish. But look at it this way. The Pentagon made an international public demand and said that they would coerce us in that press conference if we did not fulfill that demand, and they failed. So what credibility does the Pentagon have now to stand up and say North Korea must do something, we demand it must do something, or an African state must do something, or Thailand must permit greater importation of tobacco?
So you believe that
it simply has no credibility in terms of its authority anymore, because it couldn't apply its authority to us. So it has to re-establish its authority with the group that defied its authority.
Julian, how are you sleeping?
Well, I'm pretty busy, Norman, but
does
not sleeping. I don't sleep much, but the work that we have done over the past 5 years and this tremendous international battle that we have been through over the past 2 years, I am proud. I understand the significance of what we've all achieved, and I'm very proud of it.
Right, but you know what I'm asking? I'm asking about your psychological state. You run the potential of this. You could lose this case. You could go to Sweden. You could be extradited to the United States. You could spend a long time in jail. You're sounding remarkably relaxed on the phone. Are you really relaxed?
Well, since since July 2010, we've been going through this every week or every couple of months. That someone's been seized or raided or detained, or I've been arrested or imprisoned or about to be extradited and so on. Now we are reaching the end of the road, if you like, because the matter has reached the Supreme Court and there's no legal alternatives left. There are merely political alternatives left. So, but you adapt to everything, and it's.
So, is part of this frenetic activity a distraction?
It is distracting, and I mean, what else can you do in such a situation? I believe in certain things, and we're working towards those things, and it is very satisfying for me to do that. But we must all understand that we only live once anyway, and life is not so long anyway. So one should live your life fully and do something that you believe in. And what we have been doing, I believe in, and it has been successful.
How are things going in WikiLeaks itself? You hear stories of internal disagreement not being as coherent as it used to. How is the organisation itself?
Well, it's funny you mention this, Norman, because this is all nonsense. We had, during the sort of big attack on us, like all organisations, some people are stronger and some people are weaker. And we lost 2 people from the whole organisation. 2 people. And that was in 2010.
But one of them was pretty senior. Somebody who went way back with you, wasn't it?
No, not at all. Not at all. This is simply spin. And when there's a big news story, people want to be in on the news story. And so they start claiming authority and proximity that they never had. And that's something we've seen over the past year. And there has been no problems with the organisation, no resignations, and there wasn't even a resignation then. Someone was suspended. So there's been no suspension since this dramatic moment in late 2010. And yet we see these sort of issues constantly brought up by our press competitors, and we should look at it that way. That
press competitors?
Yes, that WikiLeaks is involved in sort of 3 fields of operation. One, yes, we are holding very powerful organisations to account who, of course, lash back and they try and discredit the message by attacking the messenger, and they want to reassert their authority.
That's government.
As I've just spoke, that's government, and sometimes big corporations like the Bank of America, which set up, commissioned a $2 million a month campaign to attack us through H.B. Gary, US intelligence firm. And then there are our media organisation competitors. So we are a media organisation. We have produced more words than the New York Times in the equivalent period. And so we are a competitor in that raw sense, as a competitor for providing the public information. And then in relation to individual journalists, we have over 90 media organisations that work with us and hundreds of journalists, but there are many more who do not. And so those who do not, they are social competitors. Those journalists, particularly who have tried to market themselves as protectors of freedom of the press or being on the left to the degree that they are holding government or entrenched authority to account, those journalists are in social competition with us. Media organisations are in economic competition. Those journalists are in see themselves as in social competition with us, and rightly so, because their grandiloquent claims of holding authority to account, in fact, are rather diminutive when compared to what we have achieved over the past 2 years. We work with many fine journalists from around the world, and also many fine media organisations, but there are many who are more about marketing than they are about action, and our actions have shown their marketing for what it is.
So it sounds as if, apart from your last comment, that you've built a fair degree of wall around yourself, thinking that the world is against you.
We have friends and we have enemies. A superpower like the United States is a superpower because it has its tentacles in so many different places. This is not to say that it is engaged in all sorts of secret conspiracies, although, of course, it is engaged in a vast array of secret operations, but rather there is a sort of a gradient of interest, and people all over the world of certain types try and curry favour with people that they perceive to be more powerful than them. Is not necessarily a matter of instruction, but rather those people who are perceived to be powerful, others attempt to do them favours in order to get prestige or placement or patronage. And on the other hand, we are also we have a lot of friends who understand that system. So really, if Reuters did a survey of 24 countries involving 19,000 people, looking at what the relative support for WikiLeaks was over the world. And so if we look at the top 5 countries, the most supportive countries, whose support was up at the 80% level, we see South Africa was the most supportive country, Germany, Argentina, Russia, and Australia. Australia is unique, but these other 4 countries, what do they have in common? Well, these are countries that have thrown off a regime within living memory, and they understand the abuses of government, and they understand.
Well, and some of them, like Russia, hate America.
But maybe. But why are they? China wasn't up there, for example, in that front. China is a more conservative, authoritarian country. These other countries that have thrown off a previous regime, and they understand the importance of things like the Stasi archives, the national archives, showing the bad behaviour of government, and that publishing is a way to get at the truth. And in South Africa, you had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission process, which brought out the mechanisms of government. And if we go to the other end, we have the United States as the least supportive and Britain as the second least supportive.
Julian,
but nonetheless, support in these countries, support in the United States, runs to 40% of the population. So that is despite a sort of a propaganda domestic propaganda within the United States that revealing classified information is treason.
Julian,
that's not true in most cases, but so the population, despite a hostile media within the United States, is incredibly resilient at seeing through deliberate attempts to try and push a particular agenda.
You're listening to Late Night Live with me, Norman Swan. I'm talking to Julian Assange. Julian, is Stratfor a competitor?
That's quite interesting.
But that's what people are saying. That's why you took them down, because they're a competitor of yours.
Well, I did think about this. To a degree.
I should explain to people who might not know what we're talking about. Stratfor is a subscription service, private intelligence, giving you intelligence about the world and so on. And I think, 5 million emails or something like that through WikiLeaks were released recently, and some people believe that was a competitive action.
Well, we are source-driven, Norman. I mean, we can we spend extra analytical attention on matters that we think will have greater impact. But we're source-driven in terms of information that comes to us. But if we look at Stratfor, perhaps describes it a bit generously, this is an organisation which we have discovered and published, engages in bribing people around the world to collect information, which it then uses for three purposes.
But another interpretation of that is that they're like a newspaper and they're just paying people for contributions the way that they pay a correspondent.
That's not true. It didn't start like that, and it's not ending like that, and our information has shown that it isn't like that. In fact, it does three things with its information. Number one, it collects that information and it feeds it on to its private clients, like the US military, US intelligence, Coca-Cola Corporation, Dow Chemical, to spy on Bhopal activists and so on. So it is to that extent a private intelligence organization. It also takes that information and it is attempting to use it in something called StratCap, which is its own captive investment vehicle. So it's using information gleaned from these bribes to invest in particular stocks. I
hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, Julian. But but this was that you're source driven. But this seems to have been a deliberate attack by Anonymous, the hacking organization, to do it for you. I mean, it looks as if it was a fairly deliberate act to take down Stratfor by Anonymous.
You have to understand, Norman, that as a source protection organisation, I can't speak at all about sourcing-related matters, only to say that our system that we have developed is one that is designed to give the maximum protection to sources by keeping them even anonymous to us.
Now, Julian, you talked about Russia being big fans of WikiLeaks. You've already recorded a 10-part series with Russia Today, one of the Russian television stations. Is that right?
That's correct. Where we recorded the 10th episode 2 days ago.
And who's on this is an interview-based program, I hear.
It's an interview-based program. It came out of me being isolated under house arrest, but nonetheless needing to understand the world and try and use the information from my understanding to protect our people and help run the organisation and also help analyse the material we were getting.
And who are your guests?
So we thought, well, given that we need to get people over anyway to see me because I'm so isolated, and they're quite interesting people, perhaps we should film it and release the film.
And can you tell us who
let other people share in that? So some of the guests have said that they've had been interviewed. So, for example, the president of Tunisia and Allah, a famous Egyptian revolutionary, and the leader of the leader of the Bahrainian Democratic Movement, David Horowitz, a right-wing Zionist from the United States. So there's quite a range of.
And so, how do you live with yourself, given that Russia is about 142nd on the world's list of press freedom, and this is a Kremlin-run station?
Well, you're talking about the license that Russia Today has bought. So we have our own production company. We produce everything, and we sell licenses to any media that wish to buy licenses for the production. There is no editorial input from any of the licensees, including Russia Today. But
they've instigated it.
The BBC didn't choose to buy a license. No, they didn't instigate it. That is absolutely false.
So you offered it to them?
That's correct. We offered licenses, and others, such as the Sydney Morning Herald and the Australian, are also requesting licenses. So but it's interesting, Norman, that you have this perception that somehow Russia Today is producing this when they're just a licensee. Why do you have this perception? Because we released the press release that we were engaged in this very interesting production. And then some days later, Russia Today said they had proudly bought a license. Now, that you have the perception that you have because certain groups wish to spread an attack on us, saying that, look, Julian Assange, the great defender of press freedom, WikiLeaks, the great defender of press freedom, has gotten into bed with the Kremlin, is employed by the Kremlin, is working for the Kremlin, when that is false. So this is another example of how traditional media dynamics are used to distort what the actual picture is. And if we look more broadly, so I want to pull out of this now and look at these different media organizations. So in terms of penetration in the United States for foreign media networks, the BBC has the number one penetration, Russia Today has number two, and Al Jazeera has number three. So from our perspective, Russia Today has the second best penetration into the United States, and therefore is a good deal to us if the BBC wouldn't buy a license, and of course they won't.
And we've only got a couple of minutes left, Julian. I can't avoid talking about your discussion of running for the Senate. I mean, is this just words, or do you think you can really do it?
I think we can do it. We've looked closely at the legal situation. And
which state would you run in?
Well, I've lived in fact, every state in Australia, but have particularly strong connections to Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia. So picking between those states is sort of a strategic matter, and there's interesting reasons for different states, but we need to look at, say, the Senate makeup within those states and the fraction that is required and the relative existing sort of preference swaps that are occurring and which ones are signed up. And so that's a strategic matter, but I do have, and my father lives in New South Wales and my mother lives in Victoria and so on.
We will watch with interest, Julian, and good luck in your court case.
Okay, thank you, Norman.
Thank you very much. I've just been talking to Julian Assange. You're listening to Late Night Live here.